When people talk, listen, man, I'm going to raise that red flag.
This narrative, especially after 1 year.
1 year.
One bad year. It's one big splash move. And because I don't think people understand how much cap space we can create.
Alex, I want to ask you, because you're a very humble person.
And I'm never going to be right about anything.
Yeah.
I was right.
What's up, y'all? So I am back again. I actually wasn't going to do this pod, but C3 Anthony inspired me, kind of reminded me how I was thinking last year. First, before I go into what I'm doing this about, I encourage you to watch my last show with Edgar. I always have great conversations with him. It's really strong. He's strong. He has a lot of good insight to draft. He's doing a draft show. So if that's like your bread and butter, it's a really good show to listen to. So I encourage you to watch that. All the other stuff that's just me, yeah, you don't have to watch that. But so C3 Anthony on Twitter, who is a really good follow if you want to follow him, he's kind of been talking through this with me for a year now about what we're going to do in free agency. So here's the thing. I want to make it as clear as possible and why I'm thinking that we're going to have to go draft. So, Scott Fitterer, for all his flaws, he was completely honest with us. Scott Fitterer said, this is going to be a 2-year process. He gave you the number. It's going to be a 2-year process. And all his contracts alluded to that. We didn't know Chuba was going to be Chuba, right? But in theory, Chuba's contract was going to be up this year. Xavier Woods' contract was going to be up this year. Adam Thielen, we could get off that money. Miles Sanders, we could get off that money. The guys that we already cut, Hurst, Von Bell, like we were able to get all of that. It was all leading up to 2025. So in 2023, I said, oh, I see it. I see what's coming. We're going to do what all these other organizations do, and we're preparing for the unloading of cap in 2025. So what happened is, and I can go through all of them if you want. Austin Corbett. We knew that Brady Christensen was coming off the books. We know we could get off Taylor Moton if we wanted to. All these guys we knew we had the opportunity to get off of. DJ Chark at the time. Almost every position you can think of. Even Shai Tuttle. Like you can get off of Shai Tuttle right now. Dante Jackson at that point in time. All those contracts were coming to an end at the same exact time. Why? Because what Fitterer said, what basically not what he said, but what he's implying is, I'm going to have, at this time in his mind, I'm going to have remember the algorithm. I'm going to have my quarterback. I'm going to have my left tackle because he drafted Icky. I'm going to have my defensive tackle. He drafted Brown. I'm going to have, in theory, this is the third year of Bryce. You get that wide receiver 1, and I'll explain that later. And I'm just going through the algorithm, right? I'm going to have Brian Burns because I think in his mind, he thought that he was going to be keeping Brian Burns. He has Horn. He knows he already drafted Horn, and that's his guy. So he's already got every piece of this algorithm except for the wide receiver 1, right? What happens with all these different franchises, and I'll go through them, they get their wide receiver 1 in year 3. Here's when I started getting upset. Dan Morgan he had to have understood that. And he was with Fitterer every step of the way. I understood that as a guy, right? But here's what happened. We bring in Dane Jackson, who's dead cap 2025. We bring in A'Shaun Robinson, who's dead cap 2025. We bring in Jadeveon Clowney, who's dead cap in 2025. We bring in Wanham, who's dead cap in 2025. We bring in Josie Jewell, who's dead cap in 2025. We bring in our guards. I mean, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but we bring them in, and they're dead cap in 2025. So all that cap that was supposed to be there has already been used by the new staff. So I say, okay, so what's the plan? Like, what is their plan? Because Fitterer is, you can see Fitterer is a mile away, and he told us. He said it's gonna be 2-year build, and it was absolutely correct. We get all this cap for 2022 or for 2025, all this cap, but we use it on these guys that are just guys. When other teams use it on elite, right? So let me walk you through what happens in normal NFL teams, and then I'll say what I'm not sure of what the plan is for the Panthers now when I did understand it last year. Because I've definitely changed my mind. You can see all my tweets from last year. Guys, just wait. Guys, just wait. Guys, just wait, because I saw 2025 coming. Now I'm not as positive. So I usually do 6 years, and I usually go back to 2019. Here's my problem, is that we had a draft of quarterbacks that was just terrible. So I can't really find you an example of Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Desmond Ritter, who's the guy we had, whatever his name is. Why can't I remember his name? It's just a terrible quarterback draft. So for this exercise, I went back to 2018. So 2018, for the third-year quarterback, because that's what we're going off of, because Bryce is going in his third year. Third-year quarterback usually gets his wide receiver one. So Goff got his wide receiver one in Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks was 25 years old. He's a first-round pick, and he was elite in New Orleans. He also got second-year Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. So for the most part, you get your wide receiver one, which they didn't know that Kupp was going to beat Kupp and Robert Woods was going to be Robert Woods. But usually, for the most part, you get your wide receiver one to add on top of what you already kind of built. You already have like your guy that's a wide receiver two, and you'll see that going forward. But then they unload. They bring in Ndamukong Suh, Marcus Peters. They trade for Dante Fowler. And this is when Dante Fowler was like a guy, not like now when Dante Fowler is just like a guy, but not a guy. And Aqib Talib, they spend so much money on these guys. Like they get like no fly zone again with Talib and Peters. And they already have Aaron Donald, which we already have Derek Brown. And in theory, they already had Cooper Kupp. We have Xavier Legette because that was their young guy that they're building up. And then they brought in Ndamukong Suh to come in with Derek Brown. So in theory, we could also do that. We can bring in a defensive tackle to help stop the run with Derek Brown to help him go sack the quarterback. Like Aaron Donald, I think, had 12 and a half sacks that year. This team makes the Super Bowl. This team, 2 years before, was a 4-win team. 2 years before Bryce's third year, the 2-win team. So that's the changeover that happens. You go to 2019. Patrick Mahomes is going into his third year, 2019. We say you can't rebuild a defense overnight. Let me tell you who they get. They get Frank Clark as a pass rusher, Rashad Breeland, who was on that Jets elite defense that ended up going to 2 AFC championship games, Claiborne, Okafor, rush quarterback, Terrell Suggs, you know that guy, Damian Wilson, who is a very, very strong linebacker, Thornhill, they drafted as a rookie, and Tyrann Mathieu. These are starters, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 elite starters, and they win the Super Bowl. Year 3 Mahomes. Because they had this money that they spent because they lucked out and they got Tyreek Hill in a late round and they ended up being awesome. They brought in Sammy Watkins a year early. Sammy Watkins wasn't Sammy Watkins anymore. They had an elite tight end. And they already had like a kind of a something set up with Alex Smith. They're just a great runner organization. Alex Smith set up sort of a base, but don't nobody need to tell me that we can't turn over our defense overnight because they had a great defensive tackle in Chris Jones. We have a great defensive tackle in Derek Brown. So they got all these guys. They win the Super Bowl. So right now in 2018, year 3 golf, go to the Super Bowl. Year 3, Mahomes, go to the Super Bowl. And this is the only one I think that doesn't have a wide receiver 1 attached to it. They just got, I mean, they lucked out. Just like it doesn't work for Burrow because Burrow had Jamar Chase that you just luck out sometimes in the draft. And that's why you keep drafting wide receivers in the first round. So let's go to 2021. Kyler Murray has no success his first 2 years, really. Cliff Kingsbury, no success. But they're going into year 3, and they have this young guy named Christian Kirk. He's not a number 1, but he's a decent number 2. And they go out and trade for DeAndre Hopkins and give Kyler Murray a real number 1. Not only that, they get AJ Green, Zach Ertz, Chandler Jones, Golden at linebacker, James Conner, and J.J. Watt. Then they go to the playoffs. Arizona was, I mean, from Kurt Warner to Kyler, woof. Poor Larry Fitzgerald. But at year 3 of Kyler is what they were waiting for, because that's your prove-it year. And this is why year 3 is their prove-it year. Because year 4, you have to decide if you want a 5th-year option of this guy. 5th-year option is guaranteed. So you're guaranteeing your quarterback 2 more years of money. Or you could get off of him. So it's a very pivotal year, so you have to not go all in, but pretty much go all in on that year. Because then you have to make a decision if you want to extend him for 5 more years, and then he's your franchise for 10 years. So you got to give him something year 3, because you got to know what you have in your quarterback, because you have to make that very, very, very franchise-altering decision. So that's what Kyler got in 2021. They made the playoffs. I missed a year. I missed 2020. Yeah, I went from Mahomes straight to Kyler. So that was 19 and 21. In 2020, Josh Allen is sitting there with his young core. He's got a good wide receiver 2 in John Brown. They drafted Garrett Wilson, and they go out and get a guy named Stephon Diggs. They bring in Josh Norman. They bring in Mario Addison. And they make a run in the playoffs. Right? That's great. So far, this has worked in 4 straight stops. No matter what the team is, whether they're good, bad, whatever. This has worked in 4 straight stops. No matter what the team is, whether they're good, bad, whatever. And they were bad 2 years ago because they drafted Josh Allen in the top 10 picks. And he was bad his rookie year. And they turned it around year 3 because they knew they had to see what they had in him. And now he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So now we've gone from 18, 19, 20, 21. They're all playoffs or better. 2022, Mike McDaniels goes to Miami. That year, they get a guy named Tyreek Hill for Tua's number 1. They get him a left tackle in Terrell Armstead, who was the number 1 lineman on the market. He might have been the number 1 player as far as the free agent market. Poor Saints, they couldn't afford him because they were, I don't know what they were thinking, but they should have had to let this elite talent walk. They went and got Bradley Chubb as their also linebacker defensive end. They got Trey Flowers. They got Cedric Wilson, and this is after having their strong wide receiver 2 in Jalen Waddle. So they're all following basically the same pattern. And you know what? Even with Tua getting hurt, they go to the playoffs. And Skylar Thompson takes Josh Allen to the brink in Buffalo, and they lose 34-31. So it's playoffs, yeah, right? And then we go to 2023. This is the only guy that doesn't go to the playoffs. And you know what? But it is, so this is an example of it not working out and you deciding to move on. So Justin Fields is his 3rd year. and they have to make the same decision. He gets hurt. I don't know if they made the playoffs or not. Probably not. But this is what they do. They get him DJ Moore, who's a certified wide receiver 1. They already had Mooney, who is a strong wide receiver 2. They go out and get him Yannick Ngakoue, Montez Sweat, TJ Edwards, Edmonds from the Bills, Billings defensive tackle, and Claypool. They tried. They give a second round pick for Claypool. They did their best to put strong players around him. So that's 6 straight years of examples of what the league is telling you you're supposed to do. So I've given you, so far I've given you what good teams do, like elite organizations. Crap, you know what? Did I do it again? I did do it again. I went from 2022 to 20. I went from, oh, you know what? I added another 2022. So there's Fields. So let me go back to 2022 and talk about Jalen Hurts, his year 3. They went out, they drafted Jordan Davis, defensive tackle, and they get Cam Jurgens. That was a draft, and N'Kobe Dean in the draft. They go out and get A.J. Brown, Bradbury, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Hassan Reddick, Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph, and then they already had, they saw this coming, so they already had Slay and Hargrave. So A.J. Brown, Bradbury, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Reddick, Suh, Joseph. So let's just talk about all of these drafts, all these guys. So I've just given you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different examples in the past 7 years. As a side note, think about all of these off seasons, and we're giving. we sit here with a straight face and say, "Yeah, Dan Morgan gets an A for his off season because he got Robert Hunt." I'm looking at A.J. Brown, Bradbury, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Reddick, Suh, Joseph. I'm looking at Tyreek Hill, Mostert, Armstead, Chubbs, Flowers, Cedric Wilson. I'm looking at DJ Moore, and Yannick Ngakoue, Sweat, Edwards, Billings. I'm looking at DeAndre Hopkins, Zach Ertz, Chandler Jones, James Conner, and J.J. Watt. Well, we got those 2 guards. So it's an A. So that's just an aside. That's just like kind of I'm just saying that as in jest. We got to raise our standards. So this is why I saw from a mile away what we were going to do. Now, we just ruined it. We just messed it all up. We said, buy Bozeman, buy Hurts, buy Bell, bringing in my guys that I'm going to give 2+ years contracts to. So I'm going to ruin my 2025 cap. That said, we still have an extensive amount of cap. But we don't have what Chicago had. We don't have what Washington has. We can make some big moves, but so here's the $1 million question. Coming into this year, because I knew what Fitterer was doing. I saw what Fitterer's plan was. What was Morgan's plan? So and this is not being pessimistic. This is me just going through the everything. So you see why I thought that this was going to happen in 2025. And then we get all these guys on these contracts that take up this cap in 2025. But it doesn't take up cap in 2027. So now we have a ton of cap in 2027. We have a Bryce Young that didn't play preseason, played 2 games, and before noon, the next day after the second game, he's benched. And then we have Andy Dalton come in and go 1-4, and he's still the guy. So, just going by logic, not how I feel about anything, just going by logic, we took the third year of Bryce and just kind of I don't want to use the word I want to use, but we just effed it up. But all these contracts that are made, that dead cap is done after 2026. Most new coaches want their own quarterback. It's hard to put a percentage by it. But with this obvious information, and if you don't want to think this way, you don't have to think this way. I'm trying to be as objective as possible. We took Fitterer's obvious plan. We destroyed that obvious plan. We made that plan that looks really, really good for 2027. New coaches always want their own quarterback. We basically sabotage Bryce by not playing him in the preseason and just giving him 2 games. Bryce is going to be gone. He just was. If you take all that information and you don't think that he was going to be gone, you're delusional. I'm sorry to say it that way. I don't want to be mean, but you're delusional because it all sets up that way. Morgan came in and they were setting everything up for 2027, and they were going to have a rookie quarterback in 2025. New coaches always want their own quarterback. They did something that was never before seen in NFL by benching Bryce Young after 2 games. Rolled with Andy Dalton after he's 1-4 and just getting crushed. You were 1-6 and you still don't play your young guy. You still play your old guy. Because why? For what? For what purposes? Why does Morgan and Tepper? First of all, they were available before noon the next day. Canales watches so much film that he goes from making a very obvious decision of keeping Bryce to wanting to bench him. They don't have like these big meetings about, hey, we just invested all this money in this guy. Like, why would we do this? Like, let's really let's make sure 100% that we're not making a bad move right here. It's like, yeah, whatever you want, Canales. You seem to know a lot. You were a quarterbacks coach 2 years ago. None of that makes sense. And I didn't mean for this to go here. I really meant to prove why I don't think that we're going after. I don't think we can get a big time wide receiver free agent because we didn't allocate enough cap for that. We made bad moves in last year's free agency. We were planning on getting rid of Bryce, and now we're floundering. And that's because we are a terrible organization and we make terrible moves because we think we're clever. So I have no faith in this front office as far as moving forward. I do kind of have faith in Canales because I think he's a genuine dude. But I can't see I don't see any plan for Morgan. We just might just be that team that it's just going to take forever. We're going to be the Jets. It's going to take forever. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm just going through the steps of why. Because Fitterer literally said 2 years. And they fired him before his 2 years could happen. And I'm not saying he was great, but I saw his plan happening. Canales, all he says is he just wants dogs. Okay, that's the plan? Okay, let's just get dogs. I don't know, like, these 7 teams all showed why you do this. 7 in 7 years have showed this. Because it is the standard in the NFL. Unless you're a great organization and you can just draft receivers. We're not a great organization. But you're looking at good organizations. Now the Chiefs are a great organization. Now the Eagles are a great organization. But the Cardinals weren't a great organization. They were just an organization. The Bills weren't a great organization. They're becoming a great organization. The Bears are definitely not a good organization. But they're still, because everybody knows it. Everybody knows that this is what you do. Fitterer knew. Morgan knows. But he took that dead cap in 2025 and used it. And in my opinion, it's because he was so sure that Bryce was going to be gone. He'd have his rookie quarterback with Canales, and their year 3 would have been 2027. We'll see. I don't know. I'm just calling it as I see it. But appreciate you guys watching. Again, please watch Edgar's show. Please watch John's show. Don't really worry about any other shows. They're kind of just me. And also go watch their shows, One Carolina, John, and Draft Crush with Edgar. And catch you next time.